Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar with people in clinical trials. This session will be recorded, so if people are going to join in later, they can catch it on YouTube. My name is Victor, for those who don't know me. Today, we are going to be having a talk on how to start a clinical research site, and I have Major who will be doing the presentation. We will be taking questions at the end, so you can feel free to unmute yourself and then ask your question or comment. We will also be having the opportunity to go through your chat. So if you have a burning question, you can just drop it in the chat function and we'll get to it at the end of the presentation. Without wasting any more time, Major, you can maybe just introduce yourself and then start with your presentation. Thanks.
Awesome, sure. Am I audible?
Yes.
And are you able to see my screen? I've shared my PowerPoint.
Yes, we can see it, Major.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, Victor, for the opportunity, and good evening to everyone who has attended. Thanks for taking time to be part of this presentation, and I hope that I can be able to enlighten some of the questions that you might have had with regards to how to start a clinical research site. My name is Major Gama Cindi. So I am an entrepreneur. I'm the co-founder as well as the director at CRISMO. So CRISMO is a clinical research investigator site management organization, and it's one of the company that is sponsoring this webinar. So thanks, Victor, for the opportunity. So just to get on it, colleagues, what I've done is I've made I've prepared this presentation just to talk through the to talk through the following headings. What is a clinical research site? I'm sure some of you might be asking yourself, what are we talking about, and what are the models or the types of research sites that are there. And I'll also touch on who can start a research site, as well as what do you need to start a research site, where can you establish a site, what are the regulatory requirements, and then I'll just finish off with what I call the tips or some information to help you to navigate around the clinical trial space. So I tried to look around and think of how to define really a clinical research site. So according to the Forbes.com, they define a clinical trials as a location, and I've highlighted the word location, be it a facility in a city or a tent in a village in the middle of somewhere or nowhere. So the site should also be committed to conduct ethical clinical research and to protect of research participants. They must also be committed to produce quality, reliable data for scientific purposes, as well as for safety and efficacy or effectiveness. So when we talk about the research center, we are also saying it's an organization committed to furthering the development of medicine and the advancement of medicine. As well, it's a place where the study participants in a clinical trial go for participation. So you would find a research center in a hospital. You would find a research center at a doctor's surgery, and you would find a research center standing alone in a mall. So basically, there's no a specific place for where a research center can be set up. So there are things that you need to consider basically before you set up a research center. And the question that you should ask yourself is, why do you want to, what is it that you want to research in that community? And hence we are talking about the location. I also talked about the models or the types of research centers that are there. Um, there are different models depending on where or how you want to enter. So you could enter from a site management organization. So a site management organization is a model that is used internationally. What this means is that this organization manages multiple sites. So whereas you've got a dedicated research center, it can be a research center in a hospital that is only focusing on doing clinical research or clinical trials. We call them a dedicated research center. But as soon as they become a company or an organization that manages multiple research sites, we call them a site management organization. And again, it differs with the scope. So you will realize that with a site management organization, you don't really have a site. You are a coordinator of sites. So there is an element where, as a site management organization, you can set up your own site, or you can just be a coordinator of sites where you've got one doctor in Polokwane who wants to set up a research site, you've got one doctor in the Free State who wants to set up a research site, but they don't know how to start or where to start. So as someone within the industry who's got the know-how, you could actually approach the two facilities and help them to set up under your umbrella as a site management organization. You will help them to identify studies that is relevant. You will help them to negotiate the contracts. You will help them to actually conduct the study. So a site management model, I mean, like I said, it depends where do you want to start in the industry. And we also talk about academic research sites. So you will know of Vet Health Consortium. So a Vet Health Consortium has got sites that they are managing. These are academic sites. At Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, there is a research site which is managed by Vet Health Consortium. So this is an academic site because it's within an academic institution, and most of the research that is being done there is mainly for academic purposes. If they were to do clinical trials, which are sponsored type of research, they have to, the contracting is different as compared to the type of research that they are doing. So it's possible that an academic research site could also be doing sponsored clinical trials. And then we also have got what we call independent research sites. So when we talk about independent research sites, we're talking about a doctor who's at the corner there in a mall, who's got a lot of patients who are coming to him, but he's not doing any clinical trials. So they could be approached by any sponsor to say, we can see you've got a lot of patients. What is your patient population? What type of therapeutic areas do you see? And do you have a database basically? And would you be interested in a particular study? So this independent research site will normally be your general practitioners. They would be doing more general practice kind of studies, your simple studies, non-complex studies. I mean, they wouldn't do studies that requires either hospitalization or that requires a specialist to be involved. So, and then we also have the consortium research site. So the consortium research site are these guys who are now partnering in different provinces or different countries. They come together and they form a consortium, and they are able to go back to the sponsors and bid for a study, for a big study. So if I may to make an example, if 3 people come together, they form a consortium, they've got this research site that they have set up, they could approach one sponsor and say, if you are looking for 10,000 participants, we could give you 5,000. So knowing that these numbers will be coming from a consortium, the same model could be also applied with a site management organization. So we will be taking questions or discussions at the end of the presentation. So I'll just go on and hope that everyone is following. So who can start a research site? I don't think there's a prescription basically to say who can start a research site, but I mean, it has to be someone who's got an industry know-how, research professional looking to progress from an employee to a site. So, I mean, there's a few that I have seen that have transgressed or transitioned from being an employee to become self-employed consultants, either CRA, or they became self-employed owners of a research site, and so on. So there are a number of opportunities. So anybody can be able to transition there. We also talk about medical entrepreneurs looking to expand their portfolio of investment. You could have someone who is not a medical person, but they are investing in health or in medical space. So this could be someone then who can put in their money to help you to set up a research site, or someone who can invest in a research site. If, for example, we needed expansion, we could approach anyone with big pockets or deep pockets that can be able to assist us to be part of the research site. So they can also set up a site. It also needs someone who's passionate, knowledgeable, and willing to take a challenge, because it's a challenging industry, it's a challenging field, and it's challenging to set up a research site. And if you're not passionate and you don't have the know-how, you might make mistakes in the beginning, and these are the mistakes basically that will jeopardize your chances of getting more work. We also talk about clinical research associates or study coordinators with expertise and skills in business management and marketing who can also set up a research site. You must remember that at the end of the day, as much as you are a good study coordinator or you are a good CRA, or you are a good medical doctor, if you do not have business acumen, if you don't have marketing and sales skills, this will be very challenging for you, because ultimately you must go out and sell your business to sponsors, to clinical research organization, that you have a site and these are the capabilities of the site and so on. So if you are a shy kind of a person, or you don't have much knowledge in the industry, it might be a bit tricky. We also talk about general practitioners looking to complement income with contract work. So, like I mentioned, a general practitioner in a mall can be approached to do a pain study. Nothing hectic, so they could take up this kind of work just to complement their income. One thing about income in clinical trials is not as stable or as any other business. So whereas you are a general practitioner, you are seeing patients on a daily basis, you can project that if I've seen 10 patients and I'm charging 350 per client, I've made 3,000 a day. With clinical trials, unfortunately, it's not like that. I can mention that it takes more to do that. And a retired professional with expertise in research, they could also start a research site. I also wanted to talk about what you're going to need to set up a research center or a research site. Firstly, you need funding, and I think as an entrepreneur or as someone who wants to enter into the industry, you need to to ask yourself, how much funding do I need to start? So you are talking about renting a space, or you are talking about building a space, or you are talking about a space that is already available there. How much do you need to run the site? So before you could run a site, there are things that are expected of you. Apart from setting up the facility, it's the equipment that you must have, it's the human resources that you must have, the systems and processes that you must put in place. Those they would need funding. So you need to think deeper, basically, in terms of the idea of funding that you need and where you are going to get it and how much you are going to get it. So you need to think of everything, basically, of to set up a research site, like I just mentioned. We talk about infrastructure. Within your research site, you must have a consulting room, and within this consulting room there must be equipment inside there which consists of whatever the doctor that will be using or the nurse will be using. You've got study coordinators as well, you've got a drug storage room if you don't have a pharmacy. We're talking about an archive room, and the archive room, it should be fireproof and so on. Supply storage, there's a lot of supply that comes for clinical trials. You need to have enough storage for that. Monitors, when they come to monitor the site, they also need a dedicated space where they can do the monitoring. Procedure rooms must also be there, and it must also have an emergency trolley. So I think colleagues must just make time to invest in what is required basically to start a site and so on. So because of the time that we are allocated, I'm just running through some of the things that I feel they are critical or they're important for you to consider if you want to own a research center. I also talked about the human resources that is required. The sad part, or I don't know if it's sad or it's unfortunate, but is that before you could actually approach a sponsor and say, I've got a site, I've got a capabilities, I need a study. SAPRA, which is our regulator, requires that you need to have a principal investigator who's experienced as a PI. They must be supported by a sub investigator, so you need two doctors. You also need a pharmacist, and in case one of your doctors are dispensing pharmacist, consider the type of studies that you will be doing. If you are doing blinded and unblinded studies and you have your doctor is the pharmacist or the dispenser, basically you are going to have a problem there. So it's better to have a pharmacist, and usually they would then have a backup. You require to have a nurse or a study nurse. The study nurse will also be helping with the nursing related procedures. You also need a study coordinator. So it would be good if you get a nurse who's also a study coordinator. But at the beginning, that could work. But as you grow bigger, it becomes a challenging to have to split the nurse and to do study coordination and nursing duties. We also need a clinical trial administrator, so someone basically who could assist in the day-to-day running of the site. In general, basically depending on what you require and the type of setup of site that you have. So I've just made this as an example, and I talked about the equipment that you require. You need an emergency trolley, and this emergency trolley must be fully equipped according to the regulatory guidelines. So there is a checklist from SAPRA that allows you or that guides you basically to know what are the emergency medication that is required for your trolley, your ECGs that must be calibrated annually. And I mean, emergency trolley, you talk about a defibrillator, you're talking about oxygen cylinders and so on, an ECG machine, centrifuge that must be calibrated. Some sponsors, they would require a refrigerated centrifuge. You need freezers, you need a fridge, and this freezer and the fridge, it must also be monitored. So whatever the device that you are using to monitor your fridge, it needs to be calibrated or valid. Diagnostic machines and so all these other equipment that you require, you need to make sure that you maintain them annually. So you calibrate those and you buy medication for the emergency trolley. These are the few equipments I'm mentioning, but like I say, depending on the type of study you have, some studies will say they need X-ray. If you do not have X-ray facilities, you need to have a vendor or a contractor facility that you work with, and there must be a procedure in place as well to say, if I'm going to be sending patients to facility X to do X-rays, what is my procedure basically to transport patients between my facility and the other facility. Over and above that, you need to look at the calibration for that. So if you are the one who's contracting that vendor, you are responsible to accredit them to make sure that they have got the relevant documentation. And if they are contracted by the sponsor, it's good. Like usually with the labs are contracted by the sponsor. But if you were to contract your own local lab, you need to know what is it that is required. I mean, the lab should be able to have accreditation. You need the lab director CV. You need normal reference ranges and all those kind of things. So these are the knowledge or the skills that I did mention in the beginning that you need to possess. We also talk about the operating system. Remember, you are running now a company or an organization, and the people that you will be working with, they need to be trained. What form of assurance do you have? So you're talking about the standard operating procedures. And how often are your SOP reviewed, and so on. And the most important SOP that you will be asked for is the informed consent SOP. How do you do informed consent? So you need to be very detailed there and detailed in understanding the context of South Africa, because I don't think our SOPs or our informed consent process is like any other country. We need to take into consideration those things. And how do you train your staff? What type of training do they have? How do you prove that they have been trained? Those kind of things. Informed consent process, the job description, the people that they are working with you, do they know what is it that is expected of them? They need to, the work that we are doing, we need computers, laptops. You can't do without that. You must invest in those kind of equipment as well as quality assurance, which is critical because when sponsors come to you, they want to see the quality of your site. How do you maintain quality? How do you produce quality data? Following Alcokia principles, whatever the principles that are there, you need to be aware of. I also talk about networking. I mean, as a business owner or as an entrepreneur within this space, to start up a research center, you need to know who do you talk to when you require a study. And what kind of studies do you want to do? But is your research center only for pharmaceutical sponsored type of clinical trials, or are you also looking at other business work that you can do? If you are looking at other NGO sponsored type of research, what is their requirement? If you were to work with organizations that like the USAID, for example, or FHI 360, if they come to you and say we would like to do research with you, what are their quality processes and so on. So if you familiarize with yourself with that, then you're okay. And participate in SACRA, for example. In South Africa, we've got the South African Clinical Research Association. I mean, these are great networking platforms where you can meet with the industry people, where you can meet with decision makers, and you can get to ask, is it what kind of because remember, every organization has got a niche focus. So you go to one company, a pharmaceutical company, they tell you, look, we are only looking at cancer. Cancer related studies. You go to another, or oncology, maybe don't say cancer. You go to another company, they are only looking at diabetes, for example. So you need to know who is who, and how do you set up your site that is able to accommodate this kind of studies, and that's how basically you get repeat business. Your recruitment, if you are going to promise that you are going to recruit 10 participants, you must hit that number, the target. The quality of your data, the quality of how you're conducting your studies, and then also looking at the studies, the site capabilities and experience of investigators. I found that initially we took everything that came our way without understanding that actually we are setting ourselves up for failure. So you take this difficult project with the hope that, I mean, you will recruit, but you are not able to recruit because your investigators have got no experience in that area. You don't have the right patient population for that indication, and you fail as a result. And remember my previous point where I said repeat of business is based on the recruitment numbers and being able to achieve that. Where can you establish a site? I mean, a site can be established anywhere, but it's about the location. What you need to think of is that what kind of model do I want to write to run with? I've mentioned the different types of model there. And at the end of the day, what is your objective? I mean, you can't just want to set up a research center without having an objective. You need to understand what is it that you want to do within that location that you have identified. And do you have the right patient population? What is the right patient population? Because you don't even know what type of studies you are going to get. So you need to invest more in your research, so that by the time you have set up a research center, you have thought through of all these kind of things, so that you can recruit the right study, and you can recruit the right patients, and then you can retain basically the work that you are doing. Network of healthcare facilities. So you need to also consider to say, if I'm going to be based in a province or a district that has got this number of facilities, how do I develop relationships along this area and so on? Available skills and experienced research staff. If you are going to go and open a research center in Kimberley in the Northern Cape, I can promise you that you are going to struggle to find someone who is qualified principal investigator or experienced. So you are going to fail as you start. So the best way is to say, if I'm going to set up a research center in Polokwane, is there an experienced research investigator there who's got time and who's willing to mentor other sub-investigators? So then they can become your PI, and then you can have your doctor as a sub-investigator, and those kind of things. So you must think deeper along those lines. At the same time, the expertise of the investigator. If you are going to only work with general practitioners, as an example, it means that you are going to be only attracting, majority of the studies that you'll be attracting will be general practitioner kind of studies. And you might also need to add a sub-investigator who is a specialist for any type of a special study. What are the regulatory requirements? I'm just one slide away. I'm looking at our time as well. So the clinical trial is conducted by a medical qualified doctor with experience as a principal investigator. We know that we are governed by SAPRA, which is our regulator, and we've got our ethics as well. But there is guidelines for conducting research on human participants. So the principal investigator responsibilities include appointing qualified and experienced research staff. They also must be trained and certified in GCP. So good clinical practice is a 2-day course that you need to have it's valid for 3 years. Without this, you won't be able to work on the study. So you need to consider that when you are setting up a research center, that the people that you are going to be recruiting, they must either be GCP trained, or you are going to have to spend money to train them so that you can be able to submit them. And your doctors or your medical clinical people, they should be able to be registered with the HPCSA or your SANC or your pharmacy council, and they must also have malpractice insurance. If you are going to be submitting with a SAMA REC, which is the South African Medical Research committee, they require that the nurses must, over and above the SANC, they must also have DINOSA, which is the malpractice insurance. So I mean, it doesn't have to be DINOSA, but it can be any malpractice insurance, but they require that the nurse must have that. Regular status report on progress report of the study. So it is expected that as a research site, you will be required by regulatory to provide status report on the ongoing status report, basically your SAEs and protocol deviations. You need to also have site informed consent SOPs, which are explicit in terms of how do you conduct informed consent or recruit your participant. Also, you must be ready for inspections, because you will be inspected by the regulator, you will be inspected by or audited by the sponsor, and the ethics, they also do audits as well. So these are the type of regulations that you must also be prepared for and know that they are available and will come. Where can I go for help? So site is fully engaged with the participant on the instructions of the industry experts on LinkedIn. So there are a lot of experts on LinkedIn that can help you. So you can link up with those guys and ask them questions. You can also visit your research sites or a research organization just to know what is it that they are doing and how they are doing it, and identify an industry mentor. So you can identify someone who can help you to network. You can identify someone who can help you to run a site and so on. So there are a lot of people. Unfortunately, there's no directory where you can go and say, if I want a study, these are the people that I can talk to. If I want to set up a site, these are the people I can talk to. Visit the trial related website for more information on ongoing trials. And then we also talk about the tips. So one of my tips is, don't rely on who you know. We spend a lot of time thinking, I know Victor, he works for IQVIA, he will get me in, or he will get me studies. Unfortunately, IQVIA is so big that Victor is working in a small department there. He might not even know how our sites selected and so on. So invest time on doing your research. Look at how people are doing it, where do they start, and how do they get there. So yeah, basically this is all I had for you. I hope that it was informative, and I look forward to hearing your comments and taking any of the questions. Thanks a lot, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Major. A lot of information. I think you can go on for a day talking about how to set up a site, because this is really a lot of information. I have about 3 questions, and I would like to invite all the participants. If you do have a question, please unmute yourself, and then, or maybe just raise your hand, and then I will call out your name, and then you can ask your question, or if you have a comment as well. Please, let's make this interactive, and let's get the best out of this webinar. So while we're still waiting for people to raise their hand and ask questions, I will just ask you one of my 3 questions, and then if there are any other questions, we'll take the others. So you've mentioned that you need to have qualified, people with experience, and sometimes when you're starting out, do these people need to be full-time permanent, or you can just get them as contractors?
So okay, do you want to ask all your questions, or do you want me to go to them?
Which way do you prefer?
Yeah, you can ask all 3 questions and then I'll answer.
Okay. The second question is, where do you get funding? Is this money that you save up, or are there agencies that you apply for? And then my last question is, and I know this is very, very difficult, it's a difficult question to ask, is how much would you need to set up the site? Just give us an estimate. And Junaid, I've noted your hand. As soon as Major is done with my responses, and you can ask your question. Thanks.
Okay, so I think, yeah, your first question, basically you wanted to find out if the qualified staff that is required, if whether they need to be permanent or full-time. So I can make an example with how we also started. We started with part-time. So the investigator was part-time. The nurse was also part-time. I was the only full-time person on site. So basically, if you are full-time on site, you will be doing the day-to-day running, but you can be able to accommodate the other guys on a part-time basis. And I think it worked, because we looked at the nurses who retired. So if you have a retired nurse, they come in 3 days a week. So you can schedule your patients basically around the availability of your staff. Even the doctors, they can also help you when they're available. So they can give you maybe a few hours in the morning, or they can give you a few hours on a Saturday. So like I say, you don't have to start big. When you start small with a small team, and you can also, yeah, start on a Saturday only. And as long as you are able to commit to the numbers that you need, and be able to see your patients, no patients misses a visit, and you are able to support that. So I think definitely you don't have to have full-time staff. And then in terms of your question of the funding, there is funding available in terms of the different agencies that are there, but clinical trials are not the best type of projects that these companies would fund. They don't understand what we are doing or how we are doing it. So it's been a challenge, to be honest, to say there is funding available there. So we are self-funded. So everything basically that up until here, we have funded it from our own pockets. Friends and family asking for loans and so on, but just to get by. So, but I know that we have tried to apply for funding, and we might have declined for that two or more reasons. And but the main concern would be, we don't understand your business, we don't understand how you make money, and so on, because money is dependent on whether you've got patients. If you don't have patients, you won't get money. Also, it's dependent on the type of study you have. Yeah, so it's a wheel kind of. I hope that answers your question. And then in terms of the how much you need roughly, look, like I say, it depends how big you want to start. So if you want to start small, an emergency trolley alone with a defibrillator and an oxygen machine, you are looking at 120,000. Just that equipment. So like I say, you can rent a space, and you can rent equipment. You can rent a machine, you can rent a laptop, you can rent a space, you can rent an ECG machine, you can rent all these things. You don't have to have everything at once, but it's a matter of how do you coordinate those activities to make sure that they are in one space. I can't thumb suck the amount, but you are going around your million. At least 500,000 to a million will get you a site with 2 consulting rooms.
Yeah, no, thanks. You've answered me very well. Junaid, you can unmute yourself and ask. And Ibrahim, I would like to invite you to also share your experience with setting up your site in Kimberley, if you're okay with that, just after Junaid. Go ahead, Junaid.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for quite a detailed presentation. My question basically, it narrows down to the point where you said the person who's applying or to conduct the clinical research is a medical doctor. I actually read somewhere where it said even if you have a PhD, you can be able to apply and conduct a clinical research study. I actually don't remember where I read it. So I basically want to ask, how true is this? And if it is true, what are your chances of actually getting a study if you're going to start with such an investigator?
Okay, thanks a lot, Junaid, for that question. So, the SAPRA has released a few guidelines. So maybe if you can just invest some time to go through the number of documents or guidelines that they've released. One of the guidelines basically talks about who can be a principal investigator. and there it tells you, yes, it's correct that it can be a medical doctor. It can also be a medical scientist. And you can also have a core PI. So you could have a principal investigator who's a medical doctor, and you can have a core PI who's a non-medical or who's a scientist. And one could be able to deal with administrative elements, and one could be able to deal with medical elements of the study. So that document is quite detailed. But the thing is that, you know, in South Africa, the sponsors that we are working with are not yet open to the idea of core investigators or a medical scientist as an investigator, especially for funded clinical trials. But if you are to do a study on observational study following up patients with who are COVID, I'm sure a scientist can be a principal investigator. I hope that gives you clarity.
Yeah, thank you. It gives clarity. I actually just thought of another question, but I can wait if there's someone else in line with the question.
No, you can go ahead, Junaid.
Okay, okay. What about the idea of if you're starting a site, then you want to conduct sort of everything. Obviously, when you're starting small, and you're conducting everything sort of under one room. Let's say maybe your lab area is there. Maybe you also keeping your IP there, considering the room is temperature controlled and everything. And let's say you also have a small consultation bed there. Is it something that is acceptable? Because I know with some studies, maybe they prefer this room to be different. Obviously, maybe if they're blinded studies and all of those things.
Okay. So I have worked at sites where the investigator has been awarded a study, and maybe it's a cardiologist in a cardiology unit, but they only have one room. This room is where they are conducting their clinical trials. So in that room, you have a study coordinator desk. In this room, the nurse can also be able to, there's a bed for the nurse to see the patient, to draw the blood, and there's a cabinet that is lockable to store medication. But, you know, so like I said, it depends on the type of a study that you are doing. So just on the other opposite, there was a medical doctor, or you know, his consulting room with the emergency trolley and all those kind of things. So the sponsor would be able to accommodate that. But like I say, sponsors are different. One sponsor would say, no, it's fine, we can work with this. One sponsor would say, we can't work with this. But at the end of the day, you also want to be able to separate confidentiality issues and so on. So if the doctor is going to be seeing the person in the same room that the nurse is going to be drawing blood, that the coordinator will also be entering data, I don't think that will work. But I mean, like I say, previously I've worked at a site where in one room everything is there, and so on. But yeah, you'll need to have a different type of of a trial that you can be able to do that. And I was also based in a cardiology unit where, you know, almost everything was there, but just one room that is used for conducting studies. So yeah, like I say, you have doctors who've got their own private practice. They could be awarded a study. I mean, there must be a reception area at some point. There must be you know, a waiting area. There must be where you're seeing the patients, because consenting, you must also do it privately. So it's all those kind of things that you need to consider.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir, for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Ibrahim, are you open to share your experience?
Please, Ibrahim.
Hi, Victor. I'm here.
All right, thanks, man.
I'm here. Okay, so where would you like me to start? It's been quite an experience. You know what it's like
Hmm.
trying to start up a research site. Sorry, I've got my kids and that around. I'm just trying to find a private space quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying, maybe you can give us some of the lessons, your experience, and some of the challenges that you've encountered so far.
So if I'll start with challenges, since Major did mention one of the biggest challenges that we did encounter, it was actually finding a PI. We did struggle for quite a while to find a PI, so that is something that you should take into account before you move to your city, or where you're going to try to start up your research site. So we were based in Cape Town actually, and I moved to Kimberley to start up the research site. And I was informed of a few PIs around here, but it was quite tricky initially, especially when you encounter a PI who doesn't want to be signed as well. You know what I mean? So you found a PI, but they're still not interested in that kind of thing. So that was one of the biggest challenges. The other was funding. Obviously, funding is always a challenge. Um, I actually started this research site with about 150,000, and we got an investor as well who came in with another 100,000, so about 250,000 rand to start this research site specifically. Borrowed an ECG machine from one of our doctors, one of our sub-investigators, since he's got two. So we have one 12-lead ECG machine that's actually his. Um, our space is rented. Our employees are all contract and part-time kind of thing. So we've been open for about a year. Started the end of 2018. We opened the end of 2019. We were about to start our study in June, a flu study, then COVID.
Yes.
So because of the, to obscure the results and that kind of thing. So our study got postponed to next year, June.
Yeah.
We actually just landed another study. Well, we didn't just land it, we just started it actually. We had our SIV on the 20th of October. So that's our first study that we're going to be recruiting for. So we're really excited. We're getting everything ready right now. Yeah, it's been quite fun. So yeah, that journey's been quite incredible, I guess. So yeah, I was saying we started back then. We opened now the end of 2020. I mean, the end of 2019, started our study the end of 2020. So funding in that interim has been, quite a challenge. So we've had all our employees not working for us since we signed them back in 2018, and trying to keep everybody on board, on board with this vision that's yet to start. That was also a challenge as well. So if you're going to sign those staff, it's like they're waiting,
you must
everybody's
sell a
waiting.
vision.
Exactly. And they lose enthusiasm eventually,
Yeah.
because everybody's all hyped up and then the site doesn't start or the study falls through and that kind of thing. So it's something to bear in mind, and maybe to tell your staff initially, when you sign them already, like that we might only start a year from now. Because I signed most of my guys back in 2018. We had our first GCP course. Creed came in, flew them in actually, and they did our GCP over here. Awesome guys as well. They've helped us a lot so far. Yeah, but that's something to have bear in mind, that we're going to start our study, well after we signed our team. So keeping everybody involved and keeping everybody on board as well has been quite a challenge. But we've gotten to this point. Everybody's very hyped up. DOH is on board. It's the first research center in the Northern Cape.
Wow.
So yeah, these guys are excited. Our PI is excited. Our sub-investigators are looking to get experience. So we're really a site that's been thirsty, and we've just been waiting for this opportunity, So now we've had this SIV. Everybody's ready. IP arrives next week, Monday, and we begin our study. It's really been, that's awesome.
Fantastic, man. And I know I met you, it was the end of 2018 when you just started. So I'm really glad that there's been progress there. Major, do you have anything to add? Rosa, I've noted your hand, so you can maybe after Major, if Major has anything to say, we'll take your last comment or question and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. No, I just wanted to agree with Ibrahim. Thanks for sharing that yes, it's quite a difficult journey. Sometimes you secure a study, and securing a study does not mean you are already in business. Anything can happen. Regulation can delay in terms of approving. The study could be stopped, and you have already committed these people and so on. So yeah, it's a journey, but you just need to persevere with all the challenges that it comes with. Sure.
Rosa, if you have your comment briefly. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Thank you, Major, for the presentation. So I just wanted to find out, like, okay, top the clinical research sites, and then there's no study that is coming in, and what will be happening in between, like you waiting for this study to come, and how would you really sustain your business when you're not having any study? And yeah.
Rosa, it's a challenge because like I said, you need to be an entrepreneur. I'm sorry to say this, but you know it takes at least 8 months to 10 months before a study could start. So from the day that you complete what we call a feasibility, to the day that you are initiated, it's anything between 6 to 8 months. In that 6 to 8 months, you are preparing CVs, you are preparing the site, you are preparing yourself, you are getting trained, you are doing all these regulatory submissions and so on. And you need to pay the people that you have. And if you are not creative enough, if you are not an entrepreneur to go out and look for other things to do, you are going to drown. You are going to find it very difficult to sustain the type of business. So look at the type of setup that you do and think along those lines to say, okay, I've got 2 consulting rooms. I'm next to, what else can I do? Think of reproductive health issues. Think of whatever that you can use the clinical space for. And by the way, if you are a scientist, and you know how to write a protocol, you know how to edit a protocol. There are master students who have got no idea of how to collect data. Go to universities, offer your services to the students, analyze their data if you know how to analyze data. But make yourself useful. Otherwise, it's going to be a very challenging and a waiting period. If I can confess to that.
Yeah, so versatility is a key point there. So, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your interactions. Thank you, Ibrahim, for sharing your story. Massive thanks to you, Major, for taking your time to prepare this presentation and coming through to present it. I also want to thank Prismo for sponsoring this webinars for October. Hopefully, Ibrahim, I'm putting you on the spot. I think your company's Trident Clinical Trial Center. And maybe you also can hold in a sponsorship somewhere there in the future. So yeah, thanks everyone. You have anything to say, Ibrahim?
Nothing really, just that we'd be happy to sponsor you if we get to a point where we are capable of
Yes.
sponsoring.
Absolutely, man. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. This recording will be available on YouTube. Just look out for the link on my LinkedIn page. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you. All right. Bye.